Welcome back to the show. Today we have with us Steve Bauman, who created a brand new package. It's called ImapEngine, which is deep into the abyss of email, correct?
hmm
So tell us, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about, ImapEngine and how this got started, why you created it, and sort of the backstory on it.
yeah. So I have a side project right now, not product promoting, but it's called Spamwise, and it's an email-based service. And so users can uh, sign up and they can uh, like attach their email to my service, and I need to process incoming emails, and I had to do it through IMAP. And so I did what kind of any kind of PHP developer does when they have to access some kind of protocol or some kind of something that appears super complicated, and they go, I wonder if there's a package for this, right? And so I went searching and I went and found what I thought was kind of the best at the time. And I installed that. And over, I start after I started working with that. Once you start working with this kind of stuff, you start noticing issues. You're like, oh, I bet like I could fix this or I could make this better in some certain ways. And once you start getting a handle of how it works and such. And I started getting a lot of issues with the package that I chose. And I was kind of just I ended up forking it and rebuilding it like from scratch, and that ended up just being a nightmare because it was so like convoluted and complicated. I'm like, there's no way that it's this complicated. It can't be true that it has to be this complicated to work with this protocol. It's no way. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna dive into the RFC. I'm gonna read the whole RFC and see why this is so complicated. Because I was also dove in, because when I was having these issues, I was like, okay, maybe there's another package out there I could use. I started looking around, my God, like I'm looking in the source of these packages. I'm like, why does this look so complicated? I'm like, I'm having a hard time understanding this. And so, and yeah, so I just dove into the RFC and I'm like, I'm gonna just take what I know and try to just build from the ground up, like build it, like connect with the stream, read the stream like character by character, and create a tokenizer and create a parser and all this stuff. And eventually, I got to a point of like, oh, okay, like it's not actually this difficult. I've just been reading like convoluted and difficult solutions, and I could just make it simpler.
That's awesome. The Speaking of like reading the RFC, like did, do you enjoy that? Is that like a good hobby
No,
that you have on the side? I was gonna say because
no.
that's like the driest read you'll ever find in your
Yeah,
life.
no, I didn't like it at all. It's so painful, and it was born out of the frustration. I think a lot of other developers may feel is that, you know, it- I'm like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna grind through it because I don't want anyone, if I'm gonna do this, I don't want anyone to have to read an RFC, this RFC again, and I want to never have to have other developers experience this pain. And so that was a motivation for it. I'm like, I'm gonna sit there, I'm gonna do this every night, and I'm gonna finish it, and it's gonna be beautiful.
That's awesome. Um, well, I guess that sort of leads me into yeah, what was your sort of the biggest challenges while reading this? Reading the RFC itself, or was there any code thing that was like super hard? Or
Yeah, definitely the parser and the tokenizer are the trickiest thing for sure. I use a lot of back and forth, like rubber ducking with ChatGPT and various models and stuff, just trying to figure out how to properly parse some pieces and what the proper format was of some responses and error codes and all that. It's definitely it was tricky to nail down, and it took 2 weeks to kind of really 2 weeks every night, just kind of really wrestling with it, nailing it, writing tests for it, and keep iterating and iterating on it. And I'm not typically one to write tokenizers and parsers. Like I rarely ever do that. That's super in the weeds, right? Like talking and listening to a stream back and forth is super like like low level, which is something I don't do. And that was definitely the hardest.
gotcha. I guess one of the questions that that I've seen come up a lot is how does this package differ from like the native PHP IMAP function? From from back in the day. I mean, that thing was probably created in the early '90s, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah, and I probably would have leaned into using it if the methods or the extension was like available easily, but right now the IMAP extension doesn't get shipped with PHP by default, so you can't just toggle it on in the INI file, and so you have to actually like compile PHP with it, which is its own process, and it's all like complex and convoluted. And the package that I was using at the time was just using a raw stream to do it, and its feature was like, oh, you don't have to have the extension for it. And I know the pain of having to like install the IMAP extension too, because I tried that at the very beginning of this product that I was building, and that was difficult. And one of the other primary things that the IMAP extension doesn't have is called idle, which is basically it opens up a stream and keeps it open and receives notifications of when new emails come in. And so it basically allows you to just get alerted or pinged as soon as emails arrive, and you can immediately process them or do something with them. Versus if you're working with like POP3, like other email protocol, you have to introduce polling. So you're just
Yeah.
constantly like asking the inbox if you have new emails every 15, 20 minutes or whatever interval. And so that was something that I had to have as well, which yeah isn't possible in the PHP IMAP extension.
Understood. Because I was trying to think, because I used to do a lot of email parsing back in the day, and we would basically just had it on a cron job. It would just log in through IMAP, check and see what's new, download it, and then go about its life.
Hmm.
So with this idle thing, you don't even have to do that anymore, right? It's uh, more real time, I guess is the right wording.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's real time. Yeah, so you can basically just you have to boot up some kind of daemon in the background. So you just register, like I just use a Laravel command that I register as a daemon on Forge, and it just sits there open, basically in its own loop, in its own stream loop, and it just waits for new messages from the server.
Oh, that's sweet. So, and then I assume that's like super beneficial for, I guess for like speed or,
Yeah, yeah,
basically there's just lots of benefits to doing it this way versus the sort of the old school way, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because uh, especially in the product that I'm that I built, and it's imperative that I act on the email as fast as possible. And if I was going to build it, I had to get at the emails as soon as they arrive, if possible. And if I wasn't going to be able to get them like as they came in, then there's kind of no point because if I'm looking for spam or phishing or whatever emails, and the user can interact with it before I actually scan it, then the product's kind of defunct. I can't really, I'm kind of not helping them much there. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, so how about, let me look at my note here.
Mhm.
This, I think we touched on this, but we'll just clarify. Does it support parsing and handling, sort of the different character encodings or non-UTF-8 emails or all the other mess that you might get out of a email inbox?
Yeah, luckily that's handled by the package we're talking about, zbateson mail mime parser, mime mail parser. It's whatever combination it is, but yeah, luckily because that package saved me months of work, and huge kudos to him to build such a solid package. And I looked at the code there to make sure. I was like, if I'm gonna install this, I can't just have this package wrap some other library that I don't think is well built. I really want it to be like a complete solution that feels good and is also, if any packages that I was gonna have to uh, be reliant on, that those also be well built. And so I think he did a great job on that, luckily.
Yeah, that's sweet. Yeah, that's we were talking about it kind of before we started the show, and that was a package I was had some familiarity with, because it takes a lot of the headaches out of
Mhm.
parsing. Like, it once you like, I don't know if you've never parsed emails before, you will get into the most random bugs and issues and just weird stuff that you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah. Holy moly. I was so surprised at how complicated and deep in the weeds you have to get for email parsing. Email parsing is so complicated. I was like, I hope someone wrote something well for this.
Yeah, yeah. And then everybody's like, well, there's this SaaS app you can just install and use theirs. And I was like, well, I can't use that when we do self installs, all this other stuff. But yeah, so then it was just parsing it yourself is not fun. Um,
Yeah, yeah. And I think we need these solutions if like I I feel like it's really common in the JavaScript land that you just kind of outsource these core functionalities, your auth and your queues and your email service and all this stuff. You outsource all these huge components that I feel like we should uh, be able to have ourselves in PHP without having to sign up for another service and pay them to do it. And
mhm.
and Laravel offers so much of that, so much of that for free that you can just host locally, like on your machine or on your own server.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of the benefits, to a true full stack or a full
Hmm.
framework. It handles all the stuff, and you technically don't have to go reach for third parties unless you just have some obscure use case or something. Um, but that does bring me, speaking of third party stuff, if didn't like Google and Microsoft and all those guys or apps, didn't they try to prevent you from using IMAP and wanting you to go directly to API calls now, or am I mistaken on my memory there?
No, you're partially correct for sure. So you can actually connect to IMAP through to you can use IMAP to connect to Google and Microsoft inboxes if you use either OAuth or a app password. App passwords is easier, but you kind of have to go deep in the weeds of the account to generate an app password. And usually they won't even advertise that they do it. You have to grab like a link from somewhere to navigate directly into your account to do it. Google, for example, doesn't even display that they have the functionality. You have to actually navigate directly to like an account manage link with app passwords on it and generate them there. So really deep in the weeds, but getting access to connect over IMAP with Google in particular is extremely difficult. I had to do it. I had to go through CASA 2 verification
Mm-hmm.
because if you connect through IMAP, you ultimately have full access to the mailbox. You can move emails around, you can delete them, basically full FRED, right? You can do whatever you want. And they consider that as like dangerous level of scope. And so because they see it that way, you have to go through their intense security verification. And it took me 4 months of just back and forth, getting like trying to figure out what they wanted next to make sure I was compliant. You also have to go through a third party, which does some pen testing on your live application, just to make sure that there's no obvious like holes and all that stuff, which made it very painful, very painful. And now they even they made the process even more difficult because they stopped offering it for free. So you have to pay $600 a year to keep your CASA 2 verification just for the privilege of OAuthing and connecting through IMAP.
Yeah.
So now I basically, but luckily there's a workaround to OAuth and it's for Google and it's just generating a map password and you
Mm.
bypass all of that. So that's basically what I've had to instruct users to do on my platform is connect over app password.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I seem to remember like a couple years ago we were using app passwords, and then they were like, we're shutting that down, and like you have to move to OAuth or move to something else by a certain day, and it was the same way. It was like you had to go through all the stuff, and it was just a pain. Um, but speaking of your product, I know you mentioned it's called Spamwise, so just tell me about that. Like how does that work?
Yeah, so Spamwise it's spamwise.ai and it's an AI based app and it kind of came from me getting fished. I got fished once by a perfectly targeted email, a delivery notification email. I was expecting a delivery from a company called Purelator, and I got an email like the next day saying that they tried to deliver and they're to attempt a redelivery, we're gonna have to charge you a fee. And I've had to pay this kind of fee before, and so I go through and I enter in all my information, my credit card, and they had the whole Purelator website all mocked out and stuff. And uh, and so luckily I thought that was weird as soon as I went through the payment. I'm like, that was kind of weird. I should probably check if this is on my smartphone at the time. I was doing this all through my phone. And I was like, that was kind of weird. Maybe I should check to see, like, make sure, go back to the link and double check the domain name. And of course, it was some weird domain name. I'm like, oh my gosh, why did this email, this obviously not pure later email land in my inbox? Like, why did Microsoft, because I use Outlook, and I was like, why, this is such an obvious phishing email because the address wasn't even a pure later address, but at the time they didn't show the address in there. So anyway, long story short, I was so upset that I got fished that I'm like, I'm gonna make sure that this never happens to me again, and anyone else who may have also happened to. And so I built a product that I tested first. I was like, I wonder if I could use ChatGPT to determine if an email is like phishing or not. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so accurate. It's so accurate. It's like 95 to 99% accurate. It's highly accurate in figuring out just either through header checks or by like contents or by the links and having like AI context to determine if something is spam is super accurate. And so the issue is gone for me. Like I don't have that anymore because of the product, and that's why I built it. And I'm really glad that it works.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, those are the best product ever. Is like, I had this problem and I'm just gonna fix it, and if people want to buy it, good, but it's gonna solve all my problems. And
Yeah,
those
yeah,
always seem to be really good, good products. You mentioned
yes.
Forge. I know it started off the same way. Taylor's like, this is annoying. Let's build something, and then it took off, and now it's successful. But yeah, that's a perfect use case.
Yeah,
Um,
scratch your own itch kind of stuff. Absolutely.
it is wild though. Like I use Gmail, like Google Apps for your domain or whatever, and there'll still be occasional like PayPal ones that come in, and I'm like, this is shady. Like none of this makes sense, and like I don't even know why it's in my inbox, and
Hmm.
it's like it's even like to the wrong person, but for some reason I don't even know how. I need to go back and look through all the headers, but I end up just deleting them always. I'm like, oh nope, not touching that. But yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
So as far as like the IMAP stuff, at its core, since you're sort of using another package for the parsing and stuff like that, so the IMAP side of it is you're just like logging into the mailbox, just checking, I guess, folders that you sent in your search string, and then just grabbing new emails that come out. Is that sort of, am I thinking of IMAP the right way as far as how it
Mm.
works technology wise?
Yeah, it's like a mailbox management API. So you can get all your mailbox folders, you can get all your messages in your folders. You can execute queries. Like they support like their own query syntax. So you can look for messages before or after a certain date that are were not seen or flagged or that are within certain folders, and you can move them around, delete them, flag them, unflag them, and kind of do whole management across. Oh, you can also create draft emails as well through IMAP, and then like later pick those up through SMTP and throw the like send those away. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, it's just like a complete solution to managing your mailbox.
I like that. And um, as far as like, I know since you're running Spamwise and you created this, is the majority of people sticking with like Google and Outlook, or Gmail and Outlook, or are there still quite a few people still running their own mail servers and stuff like that?
Mm. Oh yeah, that's a good question. I've actually seen it's it's pretty split. I've seen like I don't have many users. I think I have probably like 12 subscribers right now. It's
Mm-hmm.
very small still. Um, I think I have a half are Outlook and Gmail and half are like custom IMAP
Mm.
servers for sure. Yeah,
That's interesting. I didn't think anybody would still be running their own mail servers, but
for sure. Yeah.
I'm definitely surprised there.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Yeah. I'm surprised. I can't imagine running that because that would certainly be an uphill, painful battle to run your own email server and keep the reputation alive to make
Mhm,
sure that they're at all deliverable.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, and I assume like you need to I didn't even look at that on the README. You got to make sure they're if they're using IMAP engine package, then they should be using SpamWise because what better way to make sure you're not pulling in spam than to run SpamWise
Hmm.
along with IMAP engine?
Yeah,
Um,
right. That's right.
yeah. Got to cross market this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I'm always careful about kind of like cheapening the message a bit, though. I always like I don't, and it is also like a scratch mount itch thing. Like
Hmm.
it's so nice to not care if it's successful or not. I'm like, I don't care if it's successful. I'm gonna run it and maintain it regardless if anyone uses it because I'm gonna use it every single day, and it doesn't matter. And that's I think also very freeing, right? You have
Hmm.
to you're like, I don't have my livelihood riding on this
Right.
app, and also it gives confidence, I would think, to the users that okay, this guy's gonna be running it whether or not it's successful, so it doesn't matter. Like it'll always be online, essentially.
Right. What are some other apps you like as far as like the IMAP engine, like how do you see it being used or I know it's pretty new, so you might not have a lot of data behind all this, but um, I guess kind of anything that you're building PHP with email, you might need this. Is that sort of what you've been seeing, or is it like more specific use cases?
Yeah, I would think a lot. I would think it'd be used a lot in intranet apps. I came from like my career was kind of born in the enterprise world, building intranet apps for the federal government of Canada. I was a young kid just building in siloed servers, not having access to the internet, but we had all of our infrastructure internally. And so I was using PHP at the time to kind of talk to all of our internal services and stuff without access to the internet. And so I think IMapEngine would be probably particularly useful in those circumstances where you do have maybe some in-house email servers or you are kind of processing incoming emails to act upon them for something, maybe like an IT help desk or something. Uh,
Hmm.
and those kinds of apps, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we in my past history, we had a help desk app, and it was the same way. We'd had a bunch of customers that would just run it completely offline, but then I can't remember how they would get around that, but they would check emails somehow, and then but basically you could run it all offline or all behind a firewall or something.
Mm.
So that makes perfect sense there. Um, and not to sort of, well, I guess we should close out with this. Did we miss anything that you want to talk about on the IMAP engine?
Not really. I think it,
Because I
go ahead.
was gonna say, because I would like to talk about your other package. You got one called Ldap record, is that right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
uh,
It was born out of the same kind of frustration, I think, as IMapEngine.
and for those not familiar with Ldap, that is what directory access for finding users or something like that. Am I thinking about it right there?
Yeah, it's lightweight directory access protocol, and
Yeah.
again another like intranet focused protocol, like Microsoft Active Directory, which is basically a directory of users. Like if you are working in an enterprise and you have a user account, that's where it's going to be stored. And so again, since I was building everything internally in a Microsoft-based environment, everything we had everything connected to Microsoft Active Directory, which uses Ldap. And so we had like, our printers connected to it. We had all the computers, all the devices, all the phones, like mail servers, everything is connected to this Microsoft Active Directory to manage all the user accounts, all the permissions, who accesses what and everything. And so that's where that was born from. Yeah.
You're just deep into the woods of stuff that most people, I guess, most new developers probably haven't touched any of these technologies, have they? um, but which I'm trying to think of where I was going with this. So the LDAP record or LDAP directory isn't tied to email, but you can use it as far as like pulling emails, right? Am I thinking? Can't they
Yeah,
kind of go together at some point?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could use it to like authenticate, like using those credentials to authenticate IMAP, for
Mm,
example. Yeah, like that's where the username and password would be stored for the mailbox in IMAP, for example. That like in a Microsoft Exchange server could be connected to. Yeah, and
Gotcha.
it is really deep in the weeds. Yeah, it was it was something that when I again was interacting with this protocol, it's like there's got to be something out there, and the solutions out there that I tried. Again, I forked another package, and I was like, why is this so difficult? It can't be this difficult. I'm like, there's got to be a reason why it's this difficult. And so I started like playing with it and I rebuilt that package, but I'd eventually throw it all out. And I started something from scratch, and I've been maintaining it for probably the last 4 years now. It's matured quite a lot, and it has actually like a quite significant amount of downloads, and I think there is an untapped market in PHP, that in the enterprise, in the intranet enterprise market, where there's an unseen amount of people building Laravel apps internally
Yeah.
that don't
Yeah.
actually do anything on the outside. I mean, that's what I was doing for years. I wasn't building anything public facing. I had maybe, I was lucky to have maybe 10, 20 users of the enterprise kind of using my app. And I felt super proud of that at the time because I was a kid. I'm like, yes, I got like 10 people using this. This is sweet.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was a really fun experience, and it comes with trade-offs and benefits, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, on a personal level, like how, since you're so big into like the Microsoft world, what made you go with PHP versus like ASP or ASP.NET or whatever is over there now? That was when I started. It was PHP or ASP. Those were your two things, or Cold Fusion. So I'm just curious, like why PHP and not ASP, since you're in so big into the Microsoft world.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. When I went to community college, I was taught C sharp and PHP, and
Mm,
PHP at the time just seemed a lot easier, and it was kind of easier because it wasn't C sharp is very strictly typed, and you have to compile everything, and it was a slow moving process. I think at the time I gravitated to PHP because I could just change something and refresh the page, and something happen. Because every time I did jump into C sharp, I'm like change something, click the compile button and play, and then it rebuilds, and then you're able to access the new code. And it was such a hard process, a hard learning process, especially back then when you didn't have any, AI to tell
mm-hmm.
you what you're doing wrong and what you're helping. It was like I would spend hours trying to get something to compile. And so when I didn't have to deal with that in PHP land, it was such a significant productivity boost where I could just keep like change something, refresh, change something, refresh, change something, refresh, and it just kind of spiraled from there. And I'm like, okay, there's definitely some I think I can get something going here.
All right. That's cool. Yeah. My history. So when I started, it was I used Front Page, and then
What's that?
I
What's that
was
built on?
Microsoft
Ah,
Front
okay.
Page from back in the day.
Oh, right, right,
Um,
right.
and you didn't use, basically it was just a WYSIWYG, and you would publish to the web. And I was like, well, I wanted to build this, little app. And it was at the time I was like, I don't know any language, and but the internet was like, you either do ASP or PHP. So I started doing ASP because I was already on a Windows machine. I was like, oh, this will be good. But then I started looking at hosting, and like the ASP hosting was like $20 more a month, and I was like, well, that's dumb. I'll just go to PHP. And that's how I found PHP, and never left.
Gears was kind of like an economic decision at the time.
Yes, it seemed
Yeah.
to work out in the end, but that
How
was
how
that
was
was.
how was your learning curve with PHP then? How did you make that migration?
Um, so I so I was actually working at a motorcycle dealership in sales, and I was like, we need a way to show our inventory on the internet, and that sort of got me. So I just wanted to build an app. I had no programming experience at
Wow.
all, and so back then you would just go visit forums, ask questions, read questions, try to help out, and that's how I kind of sort of picked up PHP and figured it all out. So this was, way back. This was before like CSS was around. It was
Wow.
everything was
Okay.
tables, spacer gifs, stuff like that. So it was way back. But
And when did you personally discover like Laravel time?
so for me, I went from just straight PHP and then moved into found CodeIgniter, and I was like, "Ooh, this is really good." And then And then as soon as I found Laravel, which was like at version, I don't know, it was super early in Laravel, because Laravel went from like version 1 to 3 within a matter of 6 months, probably. So it was somewhere in that range is where I found Laravel, and just never left. I was like, this is great. I love it. I like the way Taylor, his ideas going forward. So I just kind of stuck with it, and the rest is history. So I guess that was
Okay.
what 13 years ago, 12. I don't know. It feels longer, but
Yeah,
could
yeah.
be could be shorter though too.
Were you in the version 3 realm then when you started building with it, or at
Oh
4?
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was in the round when it didn't have anything but just the really simple route. Like I forgot which. Anyway, it was like sort of right after the first announcement of Laravel came out. Um, it like didn't have models or controllers or anything back then,
I
and
was very bare
so
bones. Okay.
yeah, so it was really early and really, really, really a long time ago. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, back then it was IRC. We all just chatted on our IRC.
Wow, that's so old. Yeah.
uh, Back in the good old days.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
No kidding.
um, well, to go back to what you're working on, you got any other projects and stuff, or that you've been working on recently, or you have launched?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually working on a product that I didn't think that I would ever really think I'd be able to build. Is I'm working on my own email client, actually.
Mm,
So my own desktop email client, and maybe I can ship it on a phone at some point. Because I've been an Outlook user for my whole life. Not really by choice. It's just kind of landed in Outlook just when I was a kid, and I just have used it for my whole life and stuff. But I've been kind of getting a little bit upset with the recent changes with Outlook, and so I'm like, I wonder now that I've built my own you know engine for connecting to IMAP. I wonder if I could build my own email client that I would love to use, and maybe others would love to use. That is just super simple. It's just emails and no like AI nonsense, no trash all over, because I think all these email clients, the same with Gmail, and they become so heavy and convoluted with features that you don't want or need. It's like I just want my inbox, my folders, and my email with a basic like markdown editor if possible, and that's it. Like I don't need anything else other than that. So I'm wanting to. I'm right now building using native PHP actually Simon's native PHP. I'm building on top of.
oh,
So
that's
I'm gonna see
sweet.
if I can make it happen. Yeah.
I was gonna. That was actually gonna be my next question: is what you're building it on. So native PHP seems like a perfect pairing for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's funny. Like every year, I guess email clients are sort of like to do apps. Like every year, I go searching for a new email app, and nothing is like perfect. It's like surely something out there is perfect, but it's like I've yet to find it yet. And so I think there's always a market for email apps and to do apps.
Yeah, yeah. Like there's always something wrong about it, or the company you download it from is pushing one kind of service or another, or they want you to pay a subscription or something. And it's like, can I just get like an email app that just does email and that's it? Like just super bare bones and a clean interface. That's all I need and that's all I want. And
Hmm.
and all these companies are just trying to add all these services on, and especially AI, right? Like the AI craze, everyone is trying to get in that AI craze to slap services in your email, and I don't want any of that. I want like the spam protection service that I'm
Right.
using. Like I want just the emails filtered out that I shouldn't see, but when it comes to actually like looking at my email, interacting with my email, sending emails, replying, I want that to be a really clean and bare bones experience to where there's no nonsense.
Yes. Speaking of AI, the best use case I think I've seen in an email is it's through the search, and you can be like, what meetings do I have tomorrow, and it'll go through all your emails and be like, these are things that might be coming up due tomorrow, things like that, which is kind of neat, especially when you haven't like talked to somebody in a while. It's like, when's the last time I talked to you know John, and it'll just pop up and be like, here's all the Johns you've talked to recently. Things like
Yeah,
that I
have
found
you
kind of interesting.
interesting. Have you is there an email client right now or email service that does that for you?
Yeah, it's speaking of subscriptions, it's superhuman, but
Hmm.
it does all that with its AI integration. But it does a lot more that I don't. That's really the only use case that I've actually enjoyed for the AI. The rest of it's just like more annoyance, where it tries to rewrite your, it tries to be like a Grammarly and like rewrite how you're writing and stuff like that,
Exactly.
and I hate all that.
Oh my
Like, just let
gosh,
me
yeah.
just let me write in my natural tone.
Yeah, and you know what, that's so funny you say that because uh the whole issue I have with Outlook and why I'm building this email client now is because Outlook recently introduced Copilot in their writing experience. And so as you type, it shows what they think you want to say
Oh yeah,
after you're
yes.
typing, kind of like in an editor in a way. But an editor it helps more. It's like I don't need help to write an email. Like stop it. And I can't disable it. And so so now I'm building my own email client so that no one can mess with my email experience.
That's great. That's the new age of Clippy, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like, please stop.
Uh,
Please, Clippy, no.
that's wild though. Yeah, that's probably my biggest annoyance with AI is the things like that. I know Google, like Gmail, wants to do that too. I don't know if you, since you use Outlook, you probably don't use Gmail, but as you write in the Gmail interface, it tries to autocomplete
Auto
and do all
suggest.
this stuff.
Ah, okay.
And it's the same way. To me that gets on my nerves. And the
Hmm.
other one that gets on my nerves is actually Grammarly. Because I write a lot of articles for Laravel News, so I use Grammarly to try to help me fix the spelling mistakes and commas and all the other stuff. But now it's like, well, you should just rewrite this whole sentence, and then they like it loses context. It's like it just don't even sound like something I would write in the first place, and that part's very annoying with the AI.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think I've gotten to the point, there's a lot of AI tools right now that really are are trying to not get you to write things even though they should be like things that should be personal and authentic. And I think email and text messages and posts on social media, these are really like services that you should be posting things that are authentic and stuff that you would write. And
Hmm.
these services are trying to trying to shovel or pigeonhole themselves in and be like, no, it's okay. Like we'll think for you, we'll write for you. And say, I don't want that. I'm okay
Right.
with like code kind of being pushed in and I can touch it up and change it and everything. But when it comes to those personal services that require authenticity, I'd rather be okay with making the mistake of like grammar mistakes and stuff and showing that nowadays, especially nowadays, because all the AI slop that we're seeing and Twitter and Facebook and all these posts, right? Everyone's using AI to write stuff and
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. You know, it's almost like mistakes are now more authentic, and it makes it more human than than perfect writing.
exactly, which is such a weird circle of events,
Yeah, yeah. Well, even the kids, like I've got two kids in high school now, and when they do their reports, if they don't make any mistakes, then the teachers think they're cheating. So it's like there's this whole like weird dynamic going on where they can't trust anything anymore unless there's mistakes in it. It's like
Yep.
what?
Gosh, I wonder what the experience of elementary school and high school would be right now with AI.
Hmm.
That would be interesting, and your kids are living it.
Yeah, I remember. Now this probably ages me. So I took typewriting in high school, and the guy that sat beside me, of course, we were on 1992 Windows machines, but he taught me how to copy and paste, and I was like, because you'd have to write the same line like four times, and that was like, oh, this is the future. This is the best thing ever. And now it's just like AI can just do everything.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. You have such a nice frame of reference, though, right? But
Yeah.
that's so interesting because you would think that you would show anyone, from that distance of time, if you transported them to now, their mind would be absolutely shattered. They're like, how is this possible? This is like a machine god we're speaking with right now. But because it's been such a gradual increase of intelligence, we're kind of warmed into it, gradually warmed into it. And so
Hmm.
it's not as shocking as it should be, but it is actually so shocking to where we are right now. The intelligence is actually wild.
Yeah. Well, that sort of reminds me too. I know we're getting kind of off the subject, but when I first started, I really struggled like comprehending. You had a web server, you had a database server, and then you had the browser, and how those all pieces fit together. Because like I could not comprehend this database thing and how we connect to it and talk to it and all this. And then all of a sudden one day it clicked, and it's like, well, I was sort of an idiot back then, you know. But now it's just like common knowledge that everybody knows. It's like, oh yeah, it's basics. But we didn't have video tutorials back then either. You know, it was just what you could find.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was that was so new. I mean, MVC that the MVC
Yeah.
pattern was super new at that time for sure. And
Mhm.
figuring out how to do that properly and make it feel right was very difficult. You know, because
Yeah.
when I'm sure you remember this when PHP first got around, everyone was kind of you'd have a form and you'd inject PHP tags at the top of a form to like handle the form submission in its own page,
Yeah.
and that would also like execute like a SQL query to the backend database and stuff, and it was so ugly and it was weird, and everyone's trying to figure out how does this work? How do we make this work?
Yeah, well, I remember like PHP didn't even have classes, you know, back I want to say PHP 4 days or you know, you
Yeah, that's
could
right.
it was only functions. You could only write functions. And it's crazy just how far we've came in the last 20 years, you know, I guess 24 years because this would have been early night or late 90s, early 2000s when I was around. But yeah, it's just that part's crazy just thinking
Yeah,
of
not
that
having classes,
progression.
that would be wild. I've never had PHP without that functionality, so you were there for the glory days.
I mean, I'm thinking they didn't. I mean, nobody
I
used them
think you're right.
if they
Yeah,
did have classes. I don't remember ever seeing a class until like PHP 5, but I could
yeah.
be totally misremembering this stuff. You know, I am getting old now. I'm quite forgetful.
Same.
But well, I don't want to do this all day. You know, I don't want to keep you from family life and other life. But anything else you're working on that we missed that you want to bring up or want people to check out?
Hmm. Well, I would like to check out ImapEngine. Just take a look, and if they're interested in viewing how it works, or if they're thinking about building a project with it, it'd be nice to, give it a star if you're interested and take a look. And all the other open source work that I have, I think they might find things that are useful they could build with. And I really tried really hard. I try really hard in all my open source stuff to make sure that the developer experience is top tier to what my own standards. So
I love that. I love that. Well, I want to say thank you again for coming on the show and talking
thank
about
you.
all this very nerdy email stuff and active record and all the
I
fun
could talk about
things.
it for days. I'm so invested.
We,
Ask me anything about the RFC and I'll tell you.
that's great. Oh, that's fun. Well, Steve, I want to thank you again for coming on, and everybody. I'll have all the links that we talked about in the show notes, and we'll have a post on Laravel News dedicated to all this and everything. So, thanks for tuning in, and until next time.
Thank you so much.